I was a ghost in the system, a Tier 1 operator who dismantled terror cells across 3 continents. But to Officer Trent Lawson, the quiet guy in the gray hoodie standing in the TSA line at Washington Dulles International Airport, was just another thug who didn't belong in the priority lane. Driven by arrogance and prejudice, he decided to teach me a lesson in authority. He slammed this highly decorated Navy SEAL face first into the dirty linoleum, mocking me as the handcuffs clicked tight. It was the defining mistake of his life, because shortly after, a secure line rang in the Pentagon, and the full-crushing weight of the United States military was about to descend on one corrupt airport cop. The fluorescent lights of Washington Dulles International Airport hummed with a frequency that seemed to drill straight into my skull. It was a special kind of headache, the kind that comes from hours of travel, jumping from a C-130 in Ramstein to a commercial connector in London and finally here. I adjusted the strap of my duffel bag. It was an old nondescript canvas bag, the kind you might find at a surplus store for $20. I looked like anything but a threat. I wore a faded charcoal hoodie, loose-fitting jeans that had seen better days, and a pair of worn-out sneakers. To the casual observer, I looked like a college student heading home for break, or maybe a construction worker between jobs. I certainly didn't look like a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy. Nor did I look like the team leader of SEAL Team 7's Alpha Platoon. That was the point. In my world, being noticed got you killed. Being the gray man, unremarkable, forgettable, invisible, was a survival strategy. I shuffled forward in the security line, my eyes scanning the perimeter out of habit. Sector scan, exit points, threat assessment. It wasn't paranoia. It was muscle memory programmed into me over years of combat deployments. I clutched a small, battered leather satchel close to my chest. It wasn't my carry-on. It was personal. Inside was the Congressional Medal of Honor belonging to Master Chief Petty Officer James Goliath Hawkins, my mentor and brother in arms, who hadn't made it back from the last rotation in the Horn of Africa. I was on my way to deliver it to Goliath's widow, Emily Hawkins, in Arlington. Next, a bored voice droned. I stepped up to the podium. The TSA agent, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, didn't even look up as she scribbled on a clipboard. "ID and boarding pass," she said. I handed over my passport and the printed ticket. I didn't use my military ID. I just wanted to get through, get a rental car, and complete the mission. The mission wasn't over until the medal was in Emily's hands. Patricia scanned the passport, paused, and looked up. Her eyes widened slightly as the screen flashed a clearance code usually reserved for diplomats and high-ranking officials. She looked at the scruffy man in the hoodie, then back at the screen. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds," she said, her voice suddenly polite, dropping the boredom. "Priority lane is to your right." "Thanks," I murmured, my voice raspy from disuse. I moved to the right, stepping into the faster lane. I kept my head down, just wanting the silence of a car. But the shift in lanes caught the attention of someone standing near the metal detectors. Officer Trent Lawson was leaning against a pillar, his thumbs hooked into his duty belt. Lawson wasn't TSA. He was airport police, a sworn officer with a badge, a gun, and a massive chip on his shoulder. He'd spent 6 years on the force, stuck on airport detail, watching the world fly to exotic places while he spent his days yelling at tourists to take their shoes off. Lawson had tried to enlist in the Marines straight out of high school. He'd been rejected, flat feet and a psychological evaluation that flagged him for issues with authority and impulse control. He had never gotten over it. Now, he treated the international terminal like his own personal kingdom. He watched me step into the priority lane. His eyes narrowed. He saw the hoodie. He saw my dark skin. He saw the beard. He saw the way I clutched that leather satchel like it was full of contraband. "Look at this," he muttered to his partner, a younger, nervous rookie named Officer Ryan Mitchell. "Another affirmative action upgrade." "Leave it alone, Trent," Mitchell whispered, shifting uncomfortably. "TSA cleared him." "TSA clears grandmothers with knitting needles and Mrs. Bombs and shoes," Lawson scoffed, pushing himself off the pillar. He adjusted his cap. "Guy looks hinky, sweating, avoiding eye contact, clutching a bag that's textbook." "He just looks tired," Mitchell argued. "He looks like he doesn't belong in my priority lane," Lawson said, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Let's go say hello." I placed my canvas duffel on the conveyor belt. I began to unlace my sneakers. I felt a presence before I heard it, a heavy, looming shadow stepping into my personal space. "Hold it right there," a voice barked. I froze. I took a slow breath, centering myself. De-escalate. Comply. Move on. I looked up. Officer Lawson was standing 2 feet away, hand resting on his taser, chest puffed out. "Problem, officer?" I asked calmly. "That's what we're going to find out," he said loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear. "Step out of the line. Random security check." I looked at the long line of people behind me. I looked at the empty space ahead. "I've already been cleared by the podium, officer. I'm just trying to—" "I didn't ask you what you were trying to do, boy," Lawson interrupted, the slur hanging heavy in the air. "I told you to step out of the line now." My jaw tightened. I recognized the tone. I'd heard it from warlords in Yemen and insurgents in Kabul. It was the universal language of a bully with a little bit of power. I slowly picked up my leather satchel. "All right. Where do you want me?" "Over there." Lawson pointed to a stainless steel table set apart from the main flow, fully visible to the hundreds of travelers gawking at the commotion. "And give me the bag." I held the satchel tighter. "I can't do that. This bag stays with me." Lawson's eyes lit up. This was it. Resistance. "Oh, you can't. You realize you're in a federal security zone. You don't have rights here, pal. Hand over the bag." "Officer," I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerously quiet. "This bag contains classified personal effects belonging to a fallen service member. I'm under orders to maintain a chain of custody." Lawson laughed. It was a loud barking sound. "Classified? Look at you. You look like you sell bootleg DVDs out of a trunk, not handle classified intel. Don't lie to me." "I'm not lying," I said. "Check my ID again." "I don't need to check anything," Lawson snapped. He stepped forward, invading my space, his nose inches from mine. "Last warning. Give me the bag or I take you down." The air in the terminal seemed to vanish. Hundreds of eyes were watching. Phones were coming out, cameras recording. I looked at Lawson. I calculated the distance, the stance, the openings. In a combat scenario, he would have been unconscious in seconds. Broken arm, collapsed trachea. But this wasn't combat. This was home. And I was a disciplined man. "I am a lieutenant commander in the United States Navy," I stated clearly. "I'm requesting a supervisor." Lawson's face turned beet red. The request for a supervisor was the ultimate insult to his ego. "I am the supervisor," he roared. He lunged for the bag. The moment his hand touched the leather of the satchel, I moved. I didn't strike. I simply shifted my weight and twisted my wrist, breaking his grip with a technique so subtle it looked like magic. He stumbled forward, grasping at air. "Do not touch this bag," I said. I wasn't asking anymore. Lawson recovered his balance, humiliated. He heard a few chuckles from the line of passengers. That sound, the laughter of strangers, snapped something inside him. The logic center of his brain shut down, replaced entirely by adrenaline and rage. "Assault on an officer!" he screamed. "He grabbed me! Mitchell, get over here!" The rookie Mitchell hurried over, looking terrified. "Trent, maybe we should just—" "Shut up and cover me!" Lawson yelled. He unholstered his taser. "Get on the ground now. Face down, hands behind your head." I stood perfectly still. I raised my hands slowly, showing my palms. I did not get on the ground. To get on the ground was to surrender dignity. And Darius Reynolds surrendered nothing without a fight. But I also knew that if I fought, I would end up shot and the medal would be lost in evidence lockers forever. "I am complying with a non-violent posture," I announced, speaking to the cameras now. "I am not resisting. I am asking for a superior officer." I said, "Get on the ground," Lawson shouted. He didn't wait. He didn't deploy the taser prongs. He went for a drive stun, jamming the device directly into my ribs. The electricity crackled. Most men would have dropped screaming. I grunted, my abdominal muscles seizing, but I stayed standing. I'd been tortured with car batteries in a shipping container in Aleppo. A police taser was unpleasant, but it wasn't the worst day of my life. I looked Lawson in the eye, my expression one of pity, not fear. That look broke him completely. Lawson holstered the taser and drew his baton. He swung it with full force at the back of my knee. The perineal nerve strike. My leg buckled. I dropped to one knee. "Stop fighting!" he screamed, playing to the cameras, creating a narrative of resistance that didn't exist. He jumped on my back, wrapping his arm around my neck in a sloppy chokehold. I could have flipped him. I could have broken his wrist. But I knew the rules of engagement. If I hurt a cop, no matter how justified, the narrative would be, Violent drifter attacks hero cop. So I did the hardest thing a warrior can do. I endured. I let him drive me into the floor. My face hit the cold tiles hard. I tasted blood. I felt his knee drive into my spine, the full weight of the heavy-set officer pinning me down. "Gotcha now, tough guy," he panted, spit flying from his mouth. He grabbed my wrists and wrenched them behind my back, far past the point of flexibility. The crowd gasped. A woman screamed, "He didn't do anything!" "Back up!" Lawson yelled at the crowd, his hand dropping to his service pistol. "Everyone, back the hell up. This man is a dangerous suspect." Dangerous? I lay on the floor, my cheek pressed against the dirty grout. I watched my leather satchel, which had slid a few feet away. It was lying on its side. "Cuff him, Mitchell," Lawson barked. The rookie fumbled with the handcuffs. "Trent, this doesn't feel right." He barely moved. "Just cuff him." The steel ratchets clicked tight around my wrists. Lawson stood up, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked down at his prize. He felt like a king. He had taken down a threat. He had asserted dominance. He reached down and grabbed the leather satchel. "Now," he sneered, breathing heavy. "Let's see what kind of drugs you're moving." "Don't open that," I said from the floor. My voice was muffled but steady. "That is federal property." Lawson ignored me. He dumped the contents of the satchel onto the stainless steel table. There were no drugs. There was no cash. There was a folded American flag. There was a letter with the Department of the Navy seal. And there was a small blue velvet box. Lawson paused. He frowned. He picked up the velvet box. "What is this? Jewelry? Stolen goods?" He opened it. The gold star, surrounded by the green laurel wreath, glinted under the harsh airport lights. It was unmistakable. Even Lawson, with his limited knowledge, knew what the Medal of Honor looked like. It hung from a sky-blue ribbon on the back, engraved in bold letters, "Master Chief James Hawkins for conspicuous gallantry." Lawson stared at it. His brain tried to process the information, but his bias wouldn't let him. "Fake," he muttered. "Stolen valor. You stole this." He tossed the Medal of Honor onto the table like it was a piece of cheap costume jewelry. I flinched. That hurt more than the baton strike. "Get him up," Lawson ordered. "We're taking him to the holding cell. I'm charging him with assault, resisting arrest, and possession of stolen property." Mitchell helped me to my feet. The rookie looked at the medal, then at me. Mitchell's face went pale. He saw the scars on my arms now, burn marks, shrapnel scars, the map of a life spent in hell. "Trent," Mitchell whispered urgently, I think this is real." "Shut up, Ryan," Lawson snapped. He shoved me forward. "Move it." They marched me through the terminal. I walked with my head up despite the handcuffs, despite the blood trickling from my lip. I closed my eyes for a second. "Hold fast, Goliath. I'm almost there." The airport holding cell was a concrete box that smelled of stale urine and industrial cleaner. Lawson shoved me inside and slammed the heavy metal door. "Sit tight, hero," he laughed through the viewing port. "I'm going to go process your stolen goods and run your prints. By the time I come back, you'll be begging for a plea deal." I sat on the metal bench. I didn't beg. I didn't yell. I waited. A little while passed. The door opened. It wasn't Lawson. It was Officer Ryan Mitchell. The rookie looked like he was about to vomit. He held a bottle of water and a paper towel. I brought you this," he said, his voice trembling. "For your lip." I looked at the kid. "Thank you, officer." Mitchell didn't leave. He stood there wringing his hands. "He's running your prints now through the FBI database." "Is he?" I took a sip of water. "That should be interesting." "Who are you?" Mitchell asked. "Really?" "I'm exactly who I said I was," I replied, "and you need to tell your partner to answer the phone." "What phone?" "The phone at the front desk," I said calmly. "It's going to ring any second now, and if he doesn't answer it, the people calling are going to get very upset." Mitchell stared at me. "How do you know that?" "Because when Officer Lawson ran my fingerprints, it didn't just ping the FBI. It pinged the DOD Special Activities Division. It triggered a silent watch flag. Right now, a notification has popped up on a screen in the Pentagon." Mitchell took a step back. "You're serious." "I have one phone call," I said. "I suggest you let me make it before the cavalry arrives. It might save your career, son. You seem like a good kid who got stuck with a bad training officer. Don't go down with him." Mitchell hesitated. He looked at the door. He looked at the calm, terrifying man on the bench. He made a choice. He pulled his personal cell phone out of his pocket and unlocked it. "Make it quick." I took the phone. I didn't dial a lawyer. I didn't dial a bail bondsman. I dialed a number from memory, a number that bypassed switchboards and secretaries. It rang twice. "This is Callahan," a gruff voice answered. "General," I said, "it's Reynolds." There was a pause on the line. "Darius? You were supposed to be at Arlington an hour ago. Emily's worried sick." "Where are you?" "I've been detained at Washington Dulles International Airport," I said. "Local airport police officer named Lawson. He has the package, General." He threw Goliath's medal on a table and called it fake. The silence on the other end of the line was colder than the grave. When General Michael Callahan spoke again, his voice was a low rumble of approaching thunder. "He did what?" "He assaulted me, General. I'm in cuffs. But the main issue is the package. The chain of custody is broken, and he's currently handling classified documents he pulled from my bag." "Darius," the general said, "are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but I'm running out of patience." "Sit tight, Commander," Callahan said. "Do not engage. I am currently having lunch with the Secretary of Defense 3 blocks away. We are coming to you." "Roger that. And General, sir, tell that officer to look out the window." I hung up and handed the phone back to Mitchell. "What?" Mitchell swallowed hard. "What did he say?" I leaned back against the concrete wall and closed my eyes. "He said you should look out the window." At the front desk of the airport police station, Officer Trent Lawson was having a bad time. He had scanned my fingerprints into the live scan system, expecting a hit for warrants. Maybe a petty theft, a domestic dispute, or an outstanding ticket. He wanted dirt. He wanted justification for the baton strike he knew the cameras had caught. Instead, the screen had turned red. Access denied. Clearance level 5 required. Contact Department of Defense immediately. Code Archangel. Lawson stared at the screen. "Piece of junk system," he muttered. He hit refresh. The screen didn't refresh. It locked. A timer appeared in the corner, counting up. The phone on the desk rang. Lawson ignored it. He was trying to reboot the computer. The phone rang again and again. "Someone grab that," he yelled at the empty room. Mitchell was gone. He was back in the cell with me. The dispatch officer was on break. Lawson huffed and picked up the receiver. "Airport Police, Officer Lawson." "Officer Lawson," a female voice said. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. The audio quality was crystal clear. "This is Special Agent Collins with the FBI. Do not hang up this phone." Lawson rolled his eyes. "Yeah, what do you want? I'm busy processing a suspect." "You are holding a detainee named Darius Reynolds," the agent said. "Is this correct?" "Yeah, I got him. Guy had a fake badge and some stolen—" "Officer Lawson!" The voice cut him off, sharp as a razor. "You are to cease all processing immediately. You are to remove the handcuffs. You are to place the suspect in a secure, comfortable area. You are not to speak to him. You are not to touch his belongings." "Excuse me." Lawson's ego flared up again. "Listen here, lady, I don't know who you think you are, but this is my jurisdiction. This guy attacked an officer. He's going to county. If you move him 1 inch, the agent said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm, you will be charged with kidnapping of a federal asset and treason." Lawson laughed. "Treason? You're crazy." He slammed the phone down. "Feds," he muttered, always trying to step on toes. He looked at the locked computer screen. He looked at the velvet box on his desk. He opened it again, staring at the Medal of Honor. It looked so real, the weight of it. A strange sound started to vibrate the coffee in his mug. It was a low thumping sound, rhythmic, getting louder. Thump, 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 thump. Lawson frowned. He walked over to the large window that overlooked the tarmac. He squinted against the sun. In the distance, coming in fast over the Potomac, were 3 black shapes. Helicopters, but not news choppers, not traffic choppers. These were UH-60 Blackhawks, and they were coming in low. Lawson watched, confused, as the airport ground traffic suddenly halted. Baggage trucks stopped, planes on the taxiway braked. The radio on his shoulder crackled to life. "Base, this is Tower." The air traffic controller sounded panicked. "We have unauthorized military aircraft entering our airspace. They are demanding immediate clearance to the police substation pad. They say they have weapons hot." Lawson's stomach dropped. The lead helicopter banked hard, flaring its nose up as it hovered directly over the police station parking lot. The downwash rattled the windows. Lawson saw the side door of the helicopter slide open. A man was sitting on the edge, legs dangling. He was wearing full combat gear. He was holding a rifle. And on the side of the chopper, Lawson saw the emblem. the United States Navy. The phone on the desk rang again. Lawson stared at it. He looked at the helicopter landing in his parking lot. He looked at the fake metal on his desk. The blood drained from his face so fast it made him dizzy. What have I done? The glass of the front door to the airport police substation didn't shatter. It simply vibrated violently as the lead Blackhawk touched down yards away. The rotor wash kicked up a miniature sandstorm of grit, trash, and loose gravel, pelting the facade of the building. Inside, Officer Trent Lawson was paralyzed. His brain was firing misfires, trying to reconcile the reality of his small, petty kingdom with the sudden intrusion of a Tier 1 military asset. He looked at the phone in his hand, which was now emitting a dial tone. The FBI agent had hung up. "Trent!" Mitchell shouted, bursting out of the holding cell area. "What is happening? The building is shaking." "Lock the door!" Lawson stammered, his voice cracking. He drew his service weapon, his hands trembling. "Lock the front door. We're being invaded." "Are you insane?" Mitchell yelled, seeing the helicopter through the window. "That's the Navy. Put the gun away." "They're unauthorized," Lawson screamed, retreating behind the reception desk. He was deep in the delusion now, the sunk cost fallacy taking over. He had arrested a criminal. Therefore, the man must be a criminal. If the man was a criminal, these people were accomplices. It was the logic of a desperate man watching his life implode. The front door didn't need to be locked. It swung open with force. But it wasn't soldiers who entered first. It was two men in dark suits, moving with the fluid, terrifying grace of Secret Service agents. They swept the room with MP5 submachine guns, their eyes locking onto Lawson instantly. "Drop the weapon!" the lead agent shouted. "Police! Drop it now!" Lawson froze. He was staring down the barrel of a weapon that fired hundreds of rounds per minute. His Glock felt like a toy. Slowly, agonizingly, he placed his gun on the desk and raised his hands. "I'm an officer of the law," Lawson shouted, trying to muster some authority. "You are violating my jurisdiction." The agents didn't answer. They moved aside. Through the door walked a man who seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. General Michael Callahan stood tall. He was wearing his service dress, the ribbons on his chest stacked so high they looked like a colorful armor plate. His face was carved from granite, and his eyes were cold, hard flint. He was followed by 4 Navy SEALs in full tactical gear, helmets, night vision mounts, plate carriers, and suppressed rifles. They fanned out, securing the room in seconds. They didn't shout. They didn't run. They just occupied the space with lethal efficiency. General Callahan walked straight to the desk. He didn't look at Lawson. He looked at the velvet box sitting on the cluttered blotter. He picked it up gently. He inspected the Medal of Honor. He saw the smudge of Lawson's fingerprint on the gold star. His jaw tightened. "Where is he?" the general asked. His voice wasn't loud. It was a low rumble like an earthquake deep underground. Lawson swallowed. "Who?" Callahan finally looked at him. The gaze was so intense that Lawson actually took a step back, hitting the file cabinet. "Commander Reynolds," Callahan said. "My best friend's son, the man you assaulted. Where is he?" He's in the cell," Lawson squeaked. He was resisting. He had classified docs. I followed protocol. "Protocol?" Callahan repeated the word as if it tasted like poison. "General." Mitchell stepped forward from the hallway, his hands raised high, showing he was unarmed. "He's back here, sir. I've been with him. He's safe. I gave him water." Callahan looked at Mitchell. He assessed the rookie in a microsecond. He saw the fear, but also the honesty. "Lead the way, son," Callahan said. The general marched past the desk. As he passed Lawson, he stopped. He leaned in close. "You better pray to whatever God you believe in that he doesn't have a scratch on him," Callahan whispered. "Because if he does, I'm not going to court-martial you. I'm going to leave you in a room with his platoon for 5 minutes." Lawson whimpered. The SEALs stayed in the lobby. One of them, a massive operator with a beard that rivaled mine, stared at Lawson. He reached out and with one finger pushed Lawson's badge down so it was facing the desk. "You don't deserve to wear that," the operator said. In the back, Mitchell unlocked the cell door. I was still sitting on the bench. I stood up as the general entered. Despite the handcuffs, despite the bruised cheek and the swollen lip, I snapped to attention. "General," I said. "At ease, Darius," Callahan said, his voice softening. He stepped forward and wrapped me in a bear hug. "I'm sorry. We got stuck in traffic until the bird picked us up." "It's fine, sir," I said. "Just a minor delay." "Minor delay?" Callahan pulled back and looked at the handcuffs. Anger flashed in his eyes again. "Keys," he demanded, looking at Mitchell. Mitchell fumbled for his keys and unlocked the cuffs. I rubbed my wrists. The red marks were deep. "Did he hit you?" Callahan asked. "Baton strike to the perineal, drive stun to the ribs, faceplant on the floor." I listed the injuries like a grocery list. "Nothing permanent." Callahan nodded grimly. "We're leaving. Emily is waiting." "The medal?" I asked. "I have it." Callahan patted his pocket. "Safe and sound." We walked out of the cell block. As we re-entered the main lobby, the atmosphere had shifted. The airport police captain had arrived, a frantic, balding man named Captain Daniels. He was currently yelling at Lawson, who was slumped in his chair. When Daniels saw the general, he stopped yelling and went pale. He rushed over. "General, sir, I'm Captain Daniels. I just got the call. I had no idea." "Save it," Callahan cut him off. "I am taking Commander Reynolds into my custody. He requires immediate medical assessment by naval doctors." Of course," Daniels stammered. "We can drop the charges." Callahan laughed a harsh, mirthless sound. "Captain, you aren't the one filing charges anymore. We are." I don't understand," Daniels said. "That man," Callahan pointed a finger at Lawson, "assaulted a protected federal asset. He seized classified documents. He violated the Stolen Valor Act by desecrating a Medal of Honor. And he did it all while violating the civil rights of a decorated veteran." Callahan turned to the lead Secret Service agent. "Is the JAG officer en route?" "ETA 2 minutes, General. Colonel Jensen is landing now." Callahan nodded. He looked at Lawson, who was now weeping softly. "You wanted to be a big man," Callahan said to Lawson. "You wanted to play soldier. Well, congratulations. You've got the whole military's attention now." "Let's go, Darius," Callahan said. I stopped. I walked over to the desk where Lawson was sitting. I picked up my leather satchel, which had been tossed on the floor. I dusted it off. I looked Lawson in the eye. Lawson couldn't even meet my gaze. "You asked me what was in the bag," I said quietly. "It wasn't drugs, it was honor. You should try to find some." I turned to Mitchell. I extended my hand. "Thanks for the water, Ryan." Mitchell shook the hand, stunned. "Yes, sir, thank you for not killing him." I smirked. "Didn't want to do the paperwork." I, the general, and the SEALs walked out into the bright sunlight. The Black Hawk rotors began to spin up. Inside the station, the silence was deafening until the phone rang again. It all happened so fast, but the next hours would feel like years. Officer Trent Lawson sat in the interrogation room. It wasn't his interrogation room. It was a different one in the federal building downtown. He wasn't wearing his uniform anymore. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit. Across from him sat a woman who looked like she could cut glass with her cheekbones. She wore the dress blues of a Navy captain with the insignia of the Judge Advocate General's Corps. Her name was Captain Rebecca Hayes. She didn't have a notepad. She had a tablet, and she was scrolling through it with a look of utter disgust. "Mr. Lawson," Captain Hayes said. She didn't call him officer. "Do you know what qualified immunity is?" Lawson looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "Yes, it means I can't be sued for doing my job. I was doing my job." "Qualified immunity protects officers who are acting within the bounds of the law and reasonable suspicion," Hayes interrupted. "It does not protect officers who violate clearly established constitutional rights. And it certainly doesn't protect you from the Uniform Code of Military Justice when you detain active duty personnel under false pretenses during a time of heightened alert." She tapped the screen. A video began to play. Lawson flinched. It was the video from the airport, not the security camera footage. This was cell phone footage from a bystander. It was high definition. The audio was crisp. "I didn't ask you what you were trying to do, boy." Lawson closed his eyes. "The audio is quite damning," Hayes noted. "The racial slur alone is enough to get you fired, but the assault, that gets you prison." "I thought he was reaching for a weapon," Lawson cried. "We have the body cam footage from Officer Mitchell," Hayes said calmly. "Commander Reynolds' hands were empty. He was standing still. You struck him because you were embarrassed." She slid the tablet across the table. "But that's the small stuff, Mr. Lawson. Let's talk about the real problem." "Real problem?" Lawson whispered. "The Medal of Honor," Hayes said. "Do you know who James Hawkins was?" Master Chief Hawkins saved 22 men in a firefight in Somalia. He died covering the extraction. That medal is the property of the United States Congress. By seizing it, throwing it, and calling it fake, you violated 18 U.S. Code, Section 704. But more importantly, you delayed the delivery of a posthumous award to a grieving widow. Hayes leaned forward. The Secretary of the Navy is personally offended. The Pentagon press secretary is holding a briefing in an hour. Your face is going to be on every screen in America. Lawson put his head in his hands. I just want a lawyer. You have a public defender, Hayes said. Because the police union just released a statement, she read from the screen. The Fraternal Order of Airport Police condemns the actions of Officer Trent Lawson. His behavior does not reflect our values. We are initiating immediate termination proceedings and will not be providing legal counsel for his federal defense. Lawson looked like he had been shot. They dropped me. You're radioactive, Trent, Hayes said coldly. Nobody wants to touch the cop who beat up a Navy SEAL carrying a Medal of Honor. You are alone. The door opened. A man in a sharp gray suit walked in. He was a civilian, but he carried himself with dangerous confidence. This was Michael Harrington, a ruthless civil litigator known in D.C. as the Shark. Captain Hayes, Harrington nodded. Am I interrupting the criminal phase? Just finishing up, Michael, Hayes said. It's all yours. Lawson looked between them. Who is he? I represent Darius Reynolds, Harrington smiled, showing too many teeth. And I also represent Mrs. Emily Hawkins. We are filing a civil suit against you personally, Mr. Lawson, for assault, battery, defamation of character, emotional distress, and violation of civil rights. I don't have any money, Lawson shouted. I make $45,000 a year. We know, Harrington said, opening his briefcase. But you have a pension, you have a house, you have a 401k, and we are going to take all of it. Why? Lawson sobbed. Why are you doing this? Harrington stopped smiling. He leaned down, his face inches from Lawson's. Because Commander Reynolds spent the last 10 years fighting for your freedom in places you couldn't find on a map. And when he came home, you treated him like garbage because of the color of his skin. We aren't just suing you for money, Mr. Lawson. We are making an example of you. Harrington stood up. My client is currently at Walter Reed Hospital getting an MRI for the spinal damage you caused. Every dollar on that medical bill, you're paying it. Captain Hayes stood up. The MPs are waiting outside to transport you to federal holding. Enjoy the ride, Mr. Lawson. As they dragged Lawson out of the room, he saw a TV screen in the hallway. It was tuned to CNN. The headline in bold red letters read, Airport Outrage, Hero SEAL Assaulted by Rogue Cop, Pentagon Vows Full Justice. They were playing the video. The world was watching him drive his knee into my back. Lawson realized then that his life wasn't just over. It was erased. He would never be a cop again. He would never be a security guard. He would be the man in that video forever. The morning of the funeral, the sky over Virginia was a bruised purple, slowly bleeding into a steel gray dawn. It had rained during the night, a heavy washing downpour that left the world smelling of wet earth, cut grass, and ancient stone. I adjusted the collar of my dress blues. The heavy wool fabric felt constricting against the bandages taped around my ribs. Every breath was a negotiation with pain. My left knee, still swollen from the baton strike, throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache that synchronized with my heartbeat. But I welcomed the pain. It was a grounding wire. It was real. It was a reminder that I was still here, while the man in the casket yards away was not. I stood at the entrance of Section 60 in Arlington National Cemetery. This was the resting place of the warriors of this century, the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, the special operators, the men and women who had died in places most Americans only saw on a scrolling news ticker. The media circus that had surrounded me for the past days had tried to follow me here. Since the video of Officer Lawson's assault had gone global, racking up millions of views in a single day, I had become an unwilling celebrity. Hashtags like #JusticeForReynolds and #HeroInTheHoodie were trending worldwide, but the gates of Arlington were guarded by United States Marines who had no patience for paparazzi. The cameras were kept miles back behind the perimeter fence. Here, inside the hallowed ground, there was only silence. I walked with a slight limp, carrying the leather satchel, the same one that had caused the incident. It was cleaned now, the scuffs polished out, but the memory of Lawson's hands on it still made my skin crawl. I wasn't alone. Behind me walked the surviving members of SEAL Team 7, Alpha Platoon. They moved in a phalanx, a wall of silent support. They weren't wearing their tactical gear today. They were in their choker whites and dress blues, ribbons stacked high, golden trident gleaming. They were the most lethal men on the planet. Yet here they looked like grieving brothers. As we approached the gravesite, a small crowd had already gathered. Emily Hawkins stood under a green canopy, her black dress moving slightly in the cool breeze. She looked thinner than I remembered. The grief had carved hollows into her cheeks. Holding her hand was 6-year-old Ethan. The boy looked overwhelmed, his small eyes darting between the rows of white marble headstones. He was wearing a miniature set of camouflage fatigues, a heartbreaking attempt to be close to the father he would never see again. Standing slightly apart from the family was a figure that surprised many but not me. It was Ryan Mitchell, the rookie airport cop. He wasn't in uniform. He wore an ill-fitting charcoal suit that looked like it had been bought off the rack yesterday. He looked terrified, standing among high-ranking officers and Tier 1 operators. He kept his head down, wringing his hands. I broke formation and walked over to him. "You came," I said, my voice raspy. Mitchell looked up, startled. "Commander, I didn't know if I should, but the invitation, I just wanted to pay my respects and I wanted to say I'm sorry again." "You don't need to apologize, Ryan," I said, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder. "You stood up when it mattered. That's why you're here. You're not Trent Lawson." At the mention of the name, a shadow passed over Mitchell's face. "He's gone, sir. I mean, really gone. The department fired him yesterday morning. His wife left him last night. I heard he's on suicide watch in federal holding." I nodded slowly. I felt no triumph, only a cold sense of balance restored. "Choices have consequences, Ryan. He made his. Now you go make yours. Be a good cop." I turned and walked toward the grave. General Callahan was there, standing like a statue carved from granite. The Secretary of the Navy gave a solemn nod. The ceremony began. It was a traditional naval burial steeped in centuries of ritual. The Navy chaplain spoke of duty, of the last full measure of devotion. He spoke of Master Chief James Goliath, Hawkins, not as a myth but as a man who loved terrible jokes, who could fix any engine with a wrench and a prayer, and who on a dusty ridge in East Africa had stayed behind so his team could get to the choppers. I listened, but my mind drifted. I wasn't on the manicured grass of Arlington. I was back in the dust. I could smell the cordite. I could hear the snap of bullets. I could feel the weight of Goliath's body as we dragged him too late to the extraction point. "I got you home, brother," I thought, clutching the leather bag. "I got roughed up by a rent-a-cop to do it. But I got you home." When the chaplain finished, the silence that followed was heavy. "Commander Reynolds," the general whispered, "it's time." I stepped forward. The pain in my ribs flared as I moved, sharp and biting, but I kept my face impassive. I unlatched the leather satchel. My hands, usually steady enough to thread a needle in a hurricane, trembled slightly. I pulled out the blue velvet box. I walked over to Emily. She looked up at me, her eyes swimming with tears. She didn't see the bruised jaw or the swollen lip. She just saw Darius, her husband's best friend, the man who had promised to bring the medal back no matter what. "Darius," I said softly. The wind caught my voice, carrying it away over the hills. "The Navy gave this to me to give to you. But Goliath, he earned this for us, for the team, and for you." I opened the box. The Medal of Honor lay inside, resting on the white silk, the gold star, the green laurel wreath, the word of valor. It caught a stray beam of sunlight breaking through the clouds, flashing with a brilliance that seemed almost supernatural. The surrounding officers snapped to attention. This was the highest award the nation could bestow. It commanded reverence. Emily reached out, her fingers brushing the sky blue ribbon. "He never cared about the medals, Darius. He just wanted to come home." "I know," I choked out. "I know." Emily took the box. She didn't keep it. She turned to Ethan. She knelt down on the wet grass, ignoring the stain it would leave on her dress. "Ethan, look at me," she said. The boy looked at his mother. "This is from Daddy," she said. "This means Daddy was the bravest man in the world, and he wants you to have it. So you remember that you have to be brave too." She pinned the medal onto the boy's chest. The heavy gold star hung awkwardly on his small camouflage jacket, weighing down the fabric. It looked too big for him, too heavy for any child to carry. Ethan touched the cold metal. He looked up at me. "Uncle Darius?" "Yeah, buddy." "Did you fight the bad guys to get this?" I smiled. It was a sad, broken smile. "Yeah, I had to fight a few bad guys, but the hardest fight was just getting through the airport." A ripple of soft laughter moved through the SEALs behind me. It broke the tension. "Present arms!" the honor guard commander barked. 7 rifles snapped up in unison. Crack. The first volley shattered the morning silence. Birds scattered from the oak trees. Crack. The second volley echoed off the distant monuments. Crack. The third volley signaled the end. Then, the bugler began to play taps. The mournful notes drifted over the cemetery. It is a sound that every soldier knows. It is the sound of the end. It is the sound of goodbye. I stood at the position of attention, my salute rigid, my eyes locked on the flag draped over the casket. Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the sweat on my brow, stinging the cuts on my cheek. I didn't wipe them away. As the music faded and the flag was folded into a tight triangle, 13 folds, each with a meaning, General Callahan stepped up to present it to Emily on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation. I stepped back. My part was done. I limped away from the gravesite, moving toward a large oak tree where I could lean and take the weight off my leg. The adrenaline of the last few days was fading, leaving behind a crushing exhaustion. General Callahan found me there a little while later. The general lit a cigar and offered one to me. I declined. "How's the leg?" he asked, watching the smoke curl into the air. "It'll hold," I said. "I just got off the phone with the JAG office," Callahan said, his voice dropping to a low, satisfied rumble. "I thought you'd want the full brief on Lawson." I looked out at the DC skyline in the distance. "Is it over?" "It's just starting for him," Callahan said. The DA wasn't going to offer a plea, but Lawson's public defender begged for one. They rejected it. They are charging him with aggravated assault with a hate crime enhancement, deprivation of rights under color of law, and desecration of military property. He's looking at 12 to 15 years. 15 years, I repeated, for a power trip. "And the civil suit," Callahan added. "That shark, Harrington, he just filed a lien on Lawson's pension and his property. Lawson's wife has already filed for divorce and is cooperating with the prosecution to save her own skin. The man has nothing left, Darius. He is a ghost. He wanted to be important," I mused. "He wanted to be the guy who stopped the threat. Now he's just a cautionary tale in a training manual." "The airport is making changes too," Callahan said. "They fired the entire chain of command at that substation, new training protocols, and—" the general smiled slightly. "They are installing a plaque at the priority lane checkpoint. It recounts the history of the Medal of Honor, so nobody ever makes that mistake again." I pushed myself off the tree. "That's good, sir. That's justice, I guess." "Where will you go now?" Callahan asked. "You have weeks of medical leave." I looked back at the grave where Emily and Ethan were finally walking away, the medal still pinned to the boy's chest. "I think I'll go to the coast," I said. "Somewhere quiet, somewhere where nobody knows who I am. I'm tired of being a headline general. I just want to be the gray man again." "You earned it," Callahan said. He extended his hand. "Disappear, Commander. We'll call you when the world needs saving again." I shook the hand. "Ideally, sir, don't call." I turned and began the long walk out of the cemetery. I walked past the rows of white stones, past the history of a nation's wars. I walked past the reporters, still clamoring at the distant gates, hungry for a sound bite I would never give them. I adjusted my hoodie, pulling it up over my head. I hunched my shoulders slightly, masking my height. I altered my gait to hide the limp. In seconds, the hero Navy SEAL vanished. The subject of the viral video disappeared. I was just a man in a gray hoodie walking down a quiet road, carrying nothing but my honor and the memory of my friend. And for the first time in a long time, I was free. And that, folks, is the full story of how prejudice nearly broke me, but the brotherhood and justice lifted me up. Officer Lawson looked at a man and saw only what he wanted to see, a stereotype. He didn't see the sacrifice, the history, or the brotherhood that stood behind me. Lawson paid for that mistake with his career and his freedom. But the real takeaway here isn't just about punishment. It's about the quiet dignity of true strength. I didn't need to scream or fight back to prove I was powerful. I just had to stand my ground. Stand. What do you think was the most satisfying part of this story? Was it the moment the Blackhawks arrived, or was it the quiet victory at the funeral? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that karma is always watching. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there. This story isn't just about one man in a hoodie getting mistreated at an airport. It's about the quiet, unbreakable strength that lives inside people you might never notice. Darius Reynolds could have ended that confrontation in seconds. He had the training, the reflexes, the power, but he chose restraint. He chose dignity over dominance. He let himself be slammed to the floor, tasered, choked, and humiliated, all so he could protect something far more important than his pride, the Medal of Honor that belonged to his fallen brother and the promise he made to deliver it to a grieving widow and her little boy. That kind of self-control, that depth of character, hits me hard every time I think about it. In a world that screams at us to fight back, to prove we're right, to dominate every argument or insult, Darius showed us what real power looks like. Real power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it stands silently, absorbs the pain, and keeps its eyes on what truly matters. He didn't need to break Trent Lawson's arm to win. He won the moment he refused to become the monster Lawson wanted to paint him as. And in the end, justice came, not because he screamed for it, but because the truth, carried on cell phone videos and whispered phone calls to the Pentagon, refused to stay buried. Life will throw moments at you when everything inside wants to explode. People will judge you by your skin, your clothes, your silence. They'll try to shrink you down to fit their small, ugly picture. But remember, Darius, hold your ground, protect what's sacred. Let your actions speak louder than any outburst ever could. Because the strongest people aren't the ones who swing the hardest. They're the ones who stand tallest when the world tries to force them to their knees. What about you? What's the hardest moment you've had to stay calm when everything inside was screaming to fight back? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories matter. If this touched you, if it reminded you that honor and quiet strength still win in the end, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so we can keep telling these real, raw stories together. Thank you for being here. Stay strong out there.